So, Friday night we had a ball, right? Who was there? Had a good time. And I want to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge all the work that went into it, and I want to be grateful for those that came, but I also want to acknowledge that that wasn't our whole community that was there that night. That there were people that were not around, that were unavailable, that had other plans, that decided it was a little too expensive for them to afford. There are people that are part of this community who have never set foot in this building. Some of them are watching on live stream right now. Hi. And there are those that connect with us through our website or through our YouTube channel that are part of this community. So when we talk about our community, we're talking about that whole range of people. And what it means to be part of a spiritual community. There is something about it. Why do you come here? We don't have the guilt thing going for us that, we make it a sin if you don't show up, or you'll burn in purgatory for an extra few days or whatever it would be. We don't have that going for us. That's why the Catholic churches are so full. Come on, let's be real. So the assumption would be that you're here because on some level you choose to be, you want to be, or maybe you think you have to be just because of your own well-being. There's a story that's kind of a legend in our movement. I don't know if it's really true. It sounds reasonable that back in the early 50s, there was a man would walk down a street in Beverly Hills, and on that street there were 4 or 5 different churches and synagogues. And he would notice when he was walking on Sunday morning that most of the people coming out of most of those churches and synagogues didn't have a very pleasant expression on their face as they left. But there was one church there, one building, that everybody coming out just was smiling, and they'd stand around and chat, and they seemed to really be happy. So he decided to try that out one Sunday, and he went in the service, and he saw it was a very positive message, and he saw one of his best friends sitting in one of the pews, and his best friend was Jimmy Stewart, the actor. So Cary Grant went up and sat next to his best friend, and the two of them attended the Beverly Hills Church where Dr. Holmes spoke for quite a while. You see. So that story to me, I don't know if it's true or not, it's been told forever, might be, is representative that we come here because we want to feel good about ourselves. We want to feel good about our lives, and hopefully nothing happens here that would disabuse you of that kind of desire. That if you're leaving here angry or upset, that wasn't our intention. I'm not here to tell you to be afraid of going to hell or to see yourself as anything less than an emerging divine being who is magnificent in every way. And if that upsets you, I'm sorry. Because it is hard sometimes, especially when we're kind of new to the teaching, to come in and hear all this stuff about how wonderful we all are, when maybe that hasn't been your experience of yourself up to that point. And even though we're all incredibly enlightened in here, occasionally some nasty crap goes on behind the scenes. I've heard tell. I've never experienced it directly. Where there may be some gossiping or some triangulation or some phone calls that go on, did you see so-and-so? What And we know that that's not really enjoyable, but, it's sort of like you get drawn into it a little bit, It's sort of like when you're driving down the road and there's a car wreck on the other side, you kind of stop and look. When all the traffic's going well, you don't stop to admire it. There is something in human nature that we are attracted by the negative to some extent. But that's all part of being community. A community, the nature of this kind of community isn't that we're already arrived, it's that we're all on a similar journey, and we're all coming from confusion. We're all coming from different backgrounds and different experiences that have all probably confused us about the nature of ourselves and reality to a significant degree, and we're all trying to remember who we really are. And that's not a linear straight line. It tends to be a wandering journey back and forth out of the real, incredibly, sometimes the lure of a difficult past. Sometimes we're called back into that. We know we've transcended some of this stuff, but sometimes it's like some of the folks in the recovery movement say they know it's better to be sober, but man, it was fun being a drunk for. I think that's selective memory, but we all have that. Sometimes we want to go back. And there's two things about going back. One is you can't do it because time doesn't go that direction. You can't go back. That's not even an option in most cases, in any case, really. And the other thing is, somebody said once, when you think about how great the past was, we always remember the log cabin, but we forget the outhouse. That sometimes we don't remember what it would, the aspects of life that were really difficult that we have transcended, either through our modern culture or through our own inner growth. And we selectively remember how great it was before when we're encountering challenges or difficulties in the present that we'd rather not deal with. So we're all doing that at whatever level of awareness we happen to have arrived at. And we're doing that not only individually, we're doing it collectively. Every one of our centers, every one of our communities is a consciousness evolving out of whoever happens to be there. So the value of community to me is manyfold, and I just want to begin with that idea. We have this saying, loving hearts, open minds. Underneath it, it says, you are the power in your own life. That sounds good, except when it doesn't, right? Well, sure, I have a loving heart and an open mind, but I don't like that so-and-so. Or why can't everybody just be, have you ever felt yourself saying that? Why can't everybody just be the way I want them to be is the only thing you can really put in there and be honest. And they're saying the same thing about you. Loving hearts, open minds. That was what we came up with, that we wanted to reflect to the world out there, kind of, if you were to describe this community, how would you describe it in a vision statement? Loving hearts and open minds. And it may not be fully actualized. It may be largely aspirational. But that's how we grow. We grow by aspiring to what is next and leaving behind what no longer serves us. And we want to do that in a way that is loving, that comes from the heart, where our true wisdom resides. And we want to do it with an open mind so we're not closed down to anything that might benefit us. If this were a more open-minded nation, we'd have a very different experience of this election. But it isn't. It is what it is, right? And you can be angry and upset that it is the way it is, but it is the way it is, and your job is not to fix the world. Your job is to learn to live in it as it is. And that's one of the other, difficult things about our message sometimes. Osho, if you're not familiar with Osho, he's a sage from the East, and he's really a rascal. But he says, Sangha is a community of those who live with the same attitude, who live a life in common, who commune with each other. Sangha is a Sanskrit word for sacred community. Sacred community is that place where we would come together for a common purpose. And the common purpose isn't that we all be the same. The common purpose is that we support each other in our individual expression of the divine. That I want to see more divinity out of you, and you want to see more divinity out of me. And how can I encourage you, and how can you encourage me? And this is that maybe one place in your life where that's possible for some of us. For some of us where we work or where we exist in the world, that kind of consciousness isn't there, or it's not in our homes. And we come here, and this is one place where we should be able to count on people seeing the good in us. I was at an event last night. I was talking with a good friend of mine, Janny McGuire, who's a member of the Westlake Center, and she's one of their teen coordinators over there, works with the youth. And she has a program called AYM. It's Awakening Young Minds. And what she does is she and her husband Dave, they work with the Boys and Girls, or Brothers and Sisters Club and Boys and Girls Club and a bunch of different organizations, and they bring the toughest kids, the most kids in the most difficult circumstances from the LA area, and they put them through these transformational weekends. And they just did their first full week camp up in Ojai, where they had gang members doing ropes courses and trust falls and things like that. And these kids transform, she said, because they find out, and this terrifies the kids when they first arrive, they find out they're okay the way they are. That the people that run that organization accept you exactly as you are. Have you ever had that in your life? Where someone just said to you very clearly and communicated with their actions that you're fine just the way you are, and that you don't need to change for me, but you might want to awaken to who you really are. And these tough kids transform, many of them, not all of them. You know, and she said she heard a story from this young girl who was really a tough kid, and they did this workshop where you talk about who you'd like to be and how you'd like to see your life. And she wouldn't share in the workshop. She just sat there with her arms closed like this. 16-year-old. And after the workshop, there was this commotion. And somebody went over and said her nose was, she just started to bleed out of her nose. And they have a doctor that's on staff there, and they brought the doctor over and worked with her, just a blood vessel burst in her nose. And I said, Janie, what do you think that was? She goes, I knew what it was. She was putting so much energy into holding back who she really was that she burst a vessel. And later that day, she finally started to share that she had, when she was 5 years old, she walked in to her mother's bedroom and her mother was in bed with another man. So being 5, she told her dad, guess what? I saw mommy with another man in your bedroom. And Dad was rather upset. Mom ended up leaving that night, never to be seen again. And the 5-year-old decided that was her fault. And she was also then at 5, she became the mother to her 2- and 3-year-old siblings at 5. By 7, she was doing all the cooking, all the cleaning, raising a family. And she said, I got here and you told me I was okay. Don't tell me I'm okay. Don't tell me life is good. It isn't. I have ample evidence. But she said she was finally able to realize at that moment through that workshop that maybe it wasn't her fault that her mother left. The first time she was able to think of that possibility. See, we all carry stuff forward that isn't true. No matter how well you were parented, you probably weren't accepted completely by those people in your life. It's okay. It's just the way it is. We can't go back and change that. Wouldn't want to. I don't want to go back to the 50s. Do you? I mean, it's appealing to think that Father knew best, but it was a lie then. You know? So when we talk about being in community together with loving hearts and open minds, when we did the processing on that and we did the groups and everything, part of the process was, how does this look for us as a group, and how does this look for me as an individual? How do I live my life in a way that's consistent with that vision when I'm not here? And, it's usually easier here. Not always, but usually. How do I have loving hearts and open minds on the 405? Or when someone very close to me betrays me? Or when one of my kids says, I hate you? Or something like that. Those things that happen. How do I stay in a place of loving heart and open mind? Well, it helps to be in a community of people that will understand and support you as you go through that process But you have to be willing to be in the community, you know what I mean? You have to be willing to play. And you know, this is one of those communities where we don't have a lot of rules, because most of you wouldn't pay any attention to them anyway, which is great. But you can play at any level. You can stick your little toe in, or you can jump in head first. It's up to you, and you'll be accepted either way. But your experience of the organization, of the community, will be based upon your willingness to be present as part of it. Malcolm Gladwell said this in The Tipping Point. If you want to bring a fundamental change in people's belief and behavior, you need to create a community around them where those new beliefs can be practiced and expressed and nurtured. See, one of the things that we probably inherently recognize, although we may not consciously recognize it, is that you can't do this alone. It's a singular journey. There's no question about that, because your interiority is yours and yours alone. But if you don't live in a world where at least partially you're supported in being your best version of you, it's very, very, very difficult to live that version. We know, over the years, people that are in prison and they get out, if they go back to the same neighborhood, they're 2/3 more likely to be back in prison than if they go into a new surrounding. Because no matter what the intention may be, when I find myself in a world, I tend to adapt to the world I find myself in. So the value of community and being supportive is something that's essential. And supportive not only in just being friendly here, but in supportive in, giving your life some structure if that's needed, in the form of being here on Sundays and maybe coming to class and maybe volunteering and getting involved in a structured way. Because that will help you to follow through on your intention to realize more of who and what you already are. That's why we do all that stuff. Really, we create a structure for people to help you. That's our number one thing. Somebody said to me, "Oh, you just do classes to raise income." Honey, there's much better ways to raise income than for me to bust my ass doing classes all the time. I love teaching classes, but not because it's an income stream for the center. I don't even take any money from the classes I teach. It's because I recognize that if many people, not all, but many people need some kind of a structured approach to their spiritual growth and personal growth. And that's what classes provide. And you're in kind of a subculture of the larger community that is all in that same experience at the same time, and you connect with people. It's like if you go to the gym. If you got somebody working out with you, you have a harder workout, right? You have a better workout. It's the same kind of a thing. Oh, I'll just read what I want to read and I'll practice what I want to practice, and that's great. And there are people that have that capacity. That's probably maybe 5% of the population that are that self-directed and that capable of being disciplined and know where to find the next thing that'll help them grow. But for others, there's a whole structure of possibility of looking at new things in new ways and expanding your capacity to move forward in a way that's going to get some results. Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." This philosophy, the science of mind, and there are others like it, but I just happen to like this one. Imagine if everybody on the planet, now forget that, imagine if 1/10 of the planet practiced this teaching. Was positive instead of negative. Was realizing that no matter what was in front of us, that there's a power within us that's greater than that. And as we realize that power, we transcend whatever's in front of us. That you don't have to tear the country down to rebuild it. You have to innovate your way out of it because you can't go back. And people don't want to hear that. They're scared of innovation. Innovation, that sounds like change. Can't it be the way it used to be when everything was okay? Well, let me tell you something. Everything wasn't okay when you thought it was okay. There were people that were marginalized. There were people that couldn't be part of the system. There were people that were suffering. And now you got a different set of people suffering. The only way to move forward is to move forward. And I don't see any major political party that gets that, because the consciousness isn't there. We're too fear-based as a large culture. In here, we need to be something different. That's what this is about. It's about learning to live from empowerment and love and not from fear. And if you're the only one in the world that does it, good for you. If we're waiting for everybody else to get enlightened before we'll give ourselves permission to, good luck with that. Maybe next lifetime. Ernie says, love is the only final security in the universe. Love is the greatest healing power in the universe and the only thing that binds people together in a community of spirit. And love is something that we must give before we receive. So if I come in here and I'm saying, I'm not going to like this unless these people accept me and love me, that might work for a while, but soon you're going to have to realize that your font of love is within yourself. And you come here as a giver, not a taker. It's okay a lot of people come in here. I know when I came into the teaching, I was a pretty wounded soul. And if you'd have told me I got to learn how to love people, I'd have said, well, I don't think so. What's down the street? Maybe I can do that. So for a while you're in receivership. You're learning to realize something that's always been true. But once you begin to realize it, the only way to express it is to start to give it back. Maybe you're not used to seeing yourself as the strong one. Maybe you're not used to seeing yourself as the one that can come to the rescue. But you are that person. Just like that teenage girl was finally realizing that she could not any longer define her life by a mistaken idea that she was responsible for what someone else did. So when Spirit calls, we answer the phone. How can you tell if you're being called by Spirit? You've got problems. If you've got problems, anybody got any problems in their life, any issues, anything like that? Anything in front of you that you're kind of like, oh God, right? That's a calling. That's something calling something within you forth that you have yet to realize, but that is already so. See, in our teaching, we don't believe in redemption by an external deity or by a saint or by anything outside away from you. Redemption is the inner realization that I am already redeemed. I am already saved. I am already complete, whole, and perfect. And as I realize that, I live like that. And I know there's some of you now saying, well, you don't know my background. You don't know what I've been through. I don't really care, because the story's probably boring. And it doesn't matter what I think. And it doesn't matter what I think. But if you're justifying not having the life of your dreams because there's something wrong with you, you're no better off than that girl whose nose was bleeding. Maybe you need a bloody nose. Maybe you need something in your life that will be cathartic enough to make you finally look at the truth. And God bless you, I hope you get it. And maybe, that storm that wreaked havoc on the East Coast, man, for every person affected, and there's millions of people affected, there is an opportunity to realize a greater truth about yourself in every one of those situations. And if we see it any other way, we miss the point. It's not a tragedy unless we call it a tragedy. So if we're loving hearts and open minds, if we're committing ourselves to that as part of this community, what does that look like? How do I do that? Well, it's very simple. Show up and jump in the pool. You know, this is a community swim. And everybody's invited in. And you can do it at your own pace. But it's, you know, the only sin we believe in New Thought is the sin of frustrated potential. And only I can frustrate my potential by saying, well, you know, I go on Sunday and it's entertaining. Dr. Jim tells, I remember the jokes more than I remember the principle. I'm hoping I'll meet somebody there, so I need a relationship, and those people seem not quite as crazy as the people I work with. But what if you really decided to commit for your own benefit to this community? Or to a community that you can commit to. It doesn't have to be this one. What if you stepped up your level of commitment by 20% over the next year, which means I'm going to show up 20% more, I'm going to contribute 20% more, I'm going to volunteer for something 20% more of the time, which if you started at 0 would be at least something. And if you're saying, I'd like to contribute, but I don't have anything, then let's get you prosperous. How do you do that? You get involved. If you don't have money, give time. We scholarship people into our classes. You don't have to worry about that. Oh, it's inconvenient. You know, my favorite shows are on that night. I don't want to miss Revenge. And I don't have a TiVo, because I'm lacking. You know, set your priorities, folks. What are your priorities for yourself? To let yourself off the hook time after time after time and wonder why your life isn't getting better? Or to say, you know what, it's time I stepped up. What the hell? What can go wrong? Not much. You might find out it's not for you. You might find out that you think it's too much. But you know what? I think if you get into this community in a bigger way, you'll find a support system that will help you realize who you really are. And it might be inconvenient and it might be difficult. But growth is difficult by definition. But on the other side of that difficulty is the realization of who you really are, and there's no greater reward in life. And this is one of the few places that offers that, to be honest, that isn't based on creed and doctrine, that has nothing to do with reality or of who you really are, that doesn't preach that you're separate from spirit, that doesn't preach that you're unworthy, because none of that's true, quite frankly. And if I offend anyone by that, you need to be offended. We should be able to question everything to get to the true reality. And anything that can't be questioned is suspect. Because truth holds up to scrutiny. And the truth about you holds up to scrutiny. And the truth is, you're magnificent beyond measure. Every single one of you, no matter what you've done, no matter what you think you've done, no matter what other people have told you, you are magnificent beyond measure. And if you really accept that as true, your life will shine. So welcome to our community. Thank you.